In this tutorial, I'm going to talk a little bit about optimization. So here I have a table. All right, there's a previous tutorial that shows how to build this. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to call this table underscore MP, and that's going to stand for medium poly. All right, now let's take this table, I'm going to clone it, edit, clone as a copy. I'm going to call it table LP and say OK. So now we'll come over here, right click and hide unselected. So the only thing we currently have selected is our table low poly. So when you're working in games, you need to be concerned about polygon count. And that's really going to depend on how robust the system is that you're working on. So this table, as we look at it, has detail that we don't necessarily need all the time. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And one of the things that we could do to start optimizing is we have a consistent loop going all the way around, right? There's 16 polys going all the way up. So when you're thinking about optimization and you're thinking about reducing polygon count, if you kind of look at your object from a distance, what are the areas that you don't necessarily see? They start to disappear and fade away. And you're really thinking about the silhouette. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in, I'm going to lose some of the little subtle curves that are in here. Loops, remove loop, loop, loop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to this little loop menu under modeling. I'm going to click on it and drag it out. So now I'm kind of floating this tool here, and I can go around and I can start to remove some of these edges. Here we go. I'm just going to go through, I'm going to simplify this model down a little bit. I saved the other version of it because we're going to use that to generate textures. And basically, what I'm doing here is I'm kind of looking at the model, looking for areas, and from a distance I might not notice areas that aren't even quite as visible all the time. Areas like what's happening down here. We zoom out a little bit more. I might even go in and grab this ring, come over here to edit geometry and collapse that down. A lot of little subtle detail here that you're not gonna necessarily notice from a distance that we can pull out. There we go. Remove that loop. Alright, so I'm just going to go through, keep going through and pulling out some of these subtle details that are in here. That, like I said, the sort of thing you're not going to necessarily miss from a distance. There we go. Simplifying this down. There we go. So right now I'm just kind of focusing on the pedestal. So what you really notice from a distance is you really notice the base of it. Coming up, even though there's all those edges, you could probably lose some. So I'm going to try out here. Let's go, I'm going to start right about here, because I'm going to start at this spot, because from here on down you might notice changes. I'm going to go modify selection. I'm going to pull this out as well. Modify selection allows you to do things like dot loop. If I click on that, notice how it grabs every other loop going all the way around the model. I might come over here to Edit Geometry and click Collapse. Now I created triangles. That's okay. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do dot loop above it, and now I'm going to hit ring. Now I did it, whoops, I hit Z to zoom in. Now I did that to optimize. I couldn't grab the entire ring before because I wanted to keep these polygons down below. Now I can grab that ring and drop that down. So let's go and see what we're doing. I'm going to go Utilities and click, make sure if it's not here, you'll click More and find it. But what you're looking for is Polygon Counter. And you want to see your selected, not the full scene, but the selected is what's important. So I could come in here. These edges might kind of show up a little bit more than others. So I'm going to go into Edge and I'm going to dot loop and collapse those. And then right about here, come in and say dot loop, collapse, and then I'll grab that entire ring going up and collapse it. Oops, sorry, forgot to hit dot. Dot loop, and now collapse. All right, so you can see I'm going through and simplifying down my table, making it a lot simpler. I'm keeping sort of the polygons in the spots where I can really see where they are. So I might come up here, and maybe we'll try doing a dot loop from here, and collapse that. Let's see underneath, do the same thing, dot loop, collapse, and we could try the same one. Dot loop, ray, and collapse. Alright, so I'd say that last one, that's probably too much. I'm probably going to undo that. If I wanted to, I can maybe do it a little bit higher. Maybe we'll just do it right here. And how much you need to do this is really going to depend on your polygon count. Polygon count just is your overall number of polygons that you have inside a scene. And so you're going to end up with budgets on objects that you're working on. So one good number to kind of work towards is 1,000. If you keep objects under 1,000 now, that number is not going to work for everything. It's not always going to be 1,000. It's not really a realistic number all the time. So we'll just kind of work with what we have right here. So let's see a look. Now, there's a chunk in here that clearly when I made a spline object out of this, I had a curve in here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in, I'm going to select quite a few of these and just use remove loop to kind of pull those out. And maybe grab this ring and collapse that. So it sort of simplifies down that table edge there. The question is whether or not I'm going to necessarily notice that. Do I need to shave off more polygons? Do I need to keep them? I might even go so far as to lose the little lip on the bottom of the table, select that polygon and grow it up. Now when you start getting into 3D objects, having a giant polygon on the top and not knowing exactly how that's going to go, it may shade oddly. Alright, and so what we're going to do here is I'm going to come over from the top. I just want to come in and select those edges. I want to see what that is. Okay. So it's this one and this one over here, and I'm just going to bridge that. Okay. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to continue to bridge these going all the way up. So let's just go into border, click, go into edge, and deselect the two edges at the top and one at the bottom, and say bridge. And then up here I'm going to grab this border and cap it. So now, up here on the top, if I go into display and turn on edges only, you see that all of these edges are pointing over to this one point. So you get all these little triangle slivers going to one point. That may cause some odd shading when you go to render out. Whereas now that I'm defining them going across, I'm going to get better shading. So if I come back into modify, go back into border, and then once the border is selected, going into edge, deselecting the one edge here, and deselecting the two on the end, what that means is I now have an even number of edges on both sides that I can bridge. And then I just go into border, and I cap that off. It's okay to have triangles, especially when you're in optimization phase on a model. Right. I could do the same thing down here with this base. When you get into optimization, it is good to know that under Edit Geometry, there's a hide unselected. Right, that becomes incredibly useful. You can select a polygon, and then you do the same thing where if I grab the border, and then I see here there's my X edge. If I just deselect the two edges at the very top, I can bridge, and then I can grab that border and cap it off. Up here at the top of my model, there's no polygon on the top of the post, which is perfect. There's no point in having a polygon there if you're not actually going to see it. It's okay to have it hollow like that. I'm back in polygon, and I can say unhide all. One thing I can do is if I go into wireframe, I'm going to click on the top of the table here, turn back on shaded, and I can lower this down so it's just kind of poking through just a little bit. I don't need to have extra poly sitting up there that I'm not going to really see. Alright, so zooming out, right, there's a lot of really subtle detail happening here. Let's go ahead and let's take care of the top of the table too while we're at it. I'm going to click to select. I don't want to accidentally delete or select something when I'm working here that and delete it that I don't want, or select it and move it. So I'm going to go to the top view, and now an edge, I'm just going to deselect, again, those top two edges, the bottom two, and just bridge. Then I can go into border, and in border I can cap those off with triangles. Okay. I'm going to hit P to turn this back into a perspective view. I'm down to 3,636. So I think part of what I can do here is optimize down the feet. From the distance, you really don't notice a lot of the subtlety that's going on in the feet. And so I can definitely simplify that going into edge. And using remove loop, you'll notice that using remove loop actually gets rid of the edges and verts. That's not to be confused with remove underneath edit poly edges remove. Notice the vertices stay there, and so you want to really be careful of that. You want to make sure, if you are, you're using the remove loop button. There we go. And I can kind of compare the two by sort of looking over here. I don't even think I would necessarily notice. Definitely if I lost this subtle detail in here. Let's just get rid of this one. And then here, I'm going to get rid of this. That's probably, let's go ahead. We'll pull this guy out too. There we go. Alright. I think I do want to have the bottom, I want to have polygons on the bottom of this foot. So I'm going to grab those edges. Again, it's the same process. I'm grabbing edges, the front and back, and then bridging. If you end up with a triangle when you do this, it just means you probably don't have an even number selected on both sides. Alright. Another thing to consider is I'm looking at this table right here, and this foot, it's probably a lot more edges than I need, to be totally honest. So I'm going to actually go in, I'm going to undo what I just did with my bridging. And I'm going to look at where the center is, it's right about there. And I'm going to come in and grab this ring, collapse that down. Notice I'm not dot ring because I kind of want to keep it sort of centered here. And I'm going to just go through and kind of reduce generally the overall number of edges that I have on this foot. I don't think I need this. That's not really adding much to the general shape. Alright, that guy's significantly simplified now, so I feel a little bit better about that. So I'm going to go back into border and deselect my edges at the top and bottom and bridge them, and then just cap them off. And then I'm willing to bet there's a big old polygon on the top of this. So let's hide unselected. Yep. So I can come in and select that. Let's look at that foot again. Okay. So I'm going to grab the border, and I want to deselect these two here. And I'm going to deselect the two in the back. And I should be able to bridge. And we'll just double check our work by going into Element and hiding unselected. There we go. Now we can grab these guys and cap them off. There we go. Kind of going through, and we're simplifying down our overall shape on our model. All right. We could take a look at our table leg. One thing you can do when you're optimizing like this is you can get rid of polygons that you're not going to see. So this is a pretty subtle little point on the bottom of the table. If I raise that up, that's going to mean that I can probably get rid of more geo. So I'm going to go ahead and select this foot, and I'm actually going to come over to geometry and hit detach. I'm going to detach that to another object. So I can take this object here, go to object properties, and reduce the visibility to like 0.1. So now I can take a look at this table leg and see, are there polygons here that I don't actually, they're not visible? And there are. There's polygons on the back of this foot that you never really see. So I'm just going to delete those. There's no point in having those there. If they're there, they exist, and what they're going to do is they're just going to mean that I have to UV unwrap them, which I don't really want to have to UV unwrap them. If they don't actually show up, they're not visible. Okay. So the rest of this foot is pretty optimized. I'd say if anything, I could probably take the bottom of it and grab that ring going all the way around. And I want to keep kind of the outer edge here. Kind of want to keep all those edges, but here, I'm not going to miss that if I go in and collapse that down to a point, kind of simplifying that shape. For that matter, I could probably come in and use remove loop on it to really simplify down the back of the foot. You're going to see the front, but when you're at a distance, you're never going to see the back side of that foot. So I could go through and simplify that for sure. Now that did cost me a little triangle here, or a 5-sided polygon. If I go into Polygon and click Edge, you see that this polygon is made up of 5 sides. So a couple different ways I could fix it. I would probably just go into Vertex and target weld this vertex point over. And then I'm just going to select these 2 points and connect them. Let me hide unselected so it's easier for you to see. Right click and say hide unselected. Alright, so I'm going to go into Vertex, and you see how there's weird shading happening? It's because there's a triangle that is completely flat here because this is 5 sides. If I target weld this over, and then I can come in and connect here, and then edge, I can get rid of this one. So I got still some triangles, but that's okay. If I look around at the rest of the shape, I could probably optimize this further. This shape is so subtle, I would not be surprised if I collapsed those down and you didn't even notice that it was gone. There we go. Now you get a subtle angle on it, but it's still going to read from a distance. You're still going to see it just fine. So, all right, let's select this guy. All right, so he's good. He's in good shape. Let's unhide all. Oops. I need to right-click and unhide all. There we go. If you remember, I had a separate model here called table NP. So I'm going to come up here to my name selection set is what this is. I'm going to call it mid poly. I'm going to hide that. I had selected it over here in select by name. There we go. Right click on these guys and hide unselected. Okay. So I have my optimized table here. I'm going to go into object properties and turn its visibility back up to 1 and say okay. There's the foot on my table. What I can do is I optimize one foot. I don't need to go through and redo that work for all of them. I could come in here and attach or select that little foot up there and detach it as another object. And I'm going to select the old feet and attach them. And you see my table's really small now. It's at 1962. Okay, so let's find our optimized table leg, which is right here. And I'm going to attach the foot to it. There we go. Now I want to reorient this. So it looks like my pivot is off slightly. So if it looks like the center of my table is at 0, so I could try just selecting my table and say affect pivot only and center to object. There we go, the pivot's right in the center. Now I can take this foot, and if I center to object, it's going to center here, which is not what I want. So I could say align to object, no, center to object. Oops, it's the wrong one. I'm on effect pivot only. I actually want to use this tool up here called align. And now when that's active, I'm going to click on the other table. And I get my align options. And I want to align the position on X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to hit apply. Let's double check that. Effect pivot only, center on the table. And position X, Y, and Z. And say OK. There we go. And now it actually aligned it. From there, I should be able to go into rotate. I'm just going to hold, I got my angle snap on, I'm going to hold shift and drag this around. And it looks like it's about 120 degrees for me to bring those in. So then I can select those more expensive high poly or medium poly feet that I had. I can tell which one those are because they got a lot more detail. I'm just going to delete those. I don't need those anymore. Alright, select my original table and go back into attach and reattach the feet to it. Alright, so look at that. My new table is closer to 2,670 polys. Now this is a lot of polygons on the table, but it does have a lot of detail. I could still go through, and there's more I could do to optimize it. Or I could grab this ring and collapse that down. I might leave this detail up in the top. I'm thinking I want to have a really fancy table. Or if anything, maybe I'll just take this edge right here and remove that, as well as pulling out the one underneath it. Maybe I'll just pull out some of those more subtle edges right there. There we go. That's feeling pretty good. One thing nope, I think that's pretty good. I am seeing right here, there's a bit of subtle detail that I didn't even notice there as I was orbiting around. Maybe I'll grab a ring and collapse that. Alright, I think that this is pretty good for my optimized table. So I got it down to under 2,500, so that's pretty solid. So that's my table mid-poly. I'm going to go ahead and save my model with that. So that's how you go through and you optimize a model. The next step would be for me to go through and UV unwrap it.